Hey guys, welcome back to Capture Use. Look, it's daylight. I don't think I ever have recorded. Have I recorded in daylight before? I don't know. It's been a long time, guys. The sun is out, the birds are chirping. Sit with me. Sunlight. I want to see spirit fingers. Okay, that's another movie. So today, welcome to this upload, guys. Today I'm going to be doing another list. So the last video I did was the top films of 2017, so I did that list. I watch a lot of film channels and I get to see people reacting to old films and films that I love and adore. And I was watching one that was about a week ago, and it was somebody reacting to House of Wax. And in that movie, there's actually a really iconic death scene that I was like, it was just really cool to see it again. And it got me thinking, I kind of want to do a list. And I've been thinking about this for the longest time. I'm going to give you guys a top 10 most disturbing, gruesome, torturous, awesome kills. I say awesome, they might make you throw up a little bit, just a tad. Some of them, I'm not going to lie, in preparing for this upload, I had to re-watch a few of the scenes because it's been a long time and I wanted to title them appropriately for you guys to sort of go check them out if you wanted to. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have the stomach that I used to, so it's kind of funny and awkward at the same time because I'm this really big horror buff and I still love the genre very much so. Love horror movies, love horror games, love the stories that they tell, but as I've gotten older, I don't have the stomach for certain things anymore. And yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, guys. So watch this video at your own risk. Go and watch the scenes at your own risk. But if you're a horror buff, that's probably why you clicked on this video. So my top 10. Now there's so many, obviously, again, being a horror junkie, there are so many kills. So don't you forgot this iconic kill. I know there are so many, and trust me, when I was writing these down, I had to be really selective because there were so many that just started flooding through my head when I started to sit down and really think about this. But I've composed what I think is a really good little list of it's a variety list too. It's not necessarily the most torturous kills or the most gruesome kills or the goriest kills. It's just a good list with just really good kills. So number 1 on my list. Now the last list that I did was in no particular order. This one is actually ranked from my favorite to the least. Number 1 is the film Mirrors. Mirrors stars Kiefer Sutherland, Amy Smart, and I think there was somebody else in it that I recognize, but I can't remember the name now. But mostly Kiefer Sutherland. I watch people reacting to horror films. I'm always commenting and I'm like, have you seen Mirrors? It's just, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It is the mirror mouth opening death scene. Film revolves around an evil presence being reflected and trapped in the mirrors, right? So you've got two sides. You've got the reality version and the mirror world version of yourself. Amy Smart, who plays Kiefer Sutherland's sister in the film, in the mirror, she's looking at herself. She looks great. Her skin's on point girl. Such a shame. She gets into the bath and you see the reflective version. You see the twisted version of her, looking at the actual version of her in the bath, and she's all relaxed in the bath, and then you see this evil version. And it begins to sort of start to open her mouth, and it just keeps going and extending, and that's as much as I can tell you. I mean, I'm going to put pictures up here probably or down here, but it is so fucking traumatic, and it is it goes on too. A lot of these death scenes are not quick scenes. They're not the shock factor. They are shock factor, but they really run you through the mud in these kills. And yeah, this is why this is my number 1 kill, because it has stayed with me since I watched that film. And this is why I also recommend it to everybody, because I want people to experience that moment of trauma and then never being able to let it go. But it was also so awesome. It was such a well done scene. And I think it's honestly a little bit underrated because I don't see many people reacting to the movie. And I get, given it is a bit of an older movie now, but a lot of people react to classic films from the 50s and the 60s and the 80s and the 90s. And it's watch Mirror. Paula Patton's also in it. That's the one. Paula Patton. I love Paula Patton. How could I forget? Okay, number 2 on my list, really a classic for me, a lot of people I think, and that is Ghost Ship. Ghost Ship, what can I say about it? It's so good. It's so good. I don't want to go into detail and explain the whole movie. Watch it if you haven't seen it. But basically, the intro of Ghost Ship. This is literally how the movie starts out. And I really give props to directors and filmmakers that have the balls to go hard from the start with a scene like that. This scene is just, it's beautiful. Like, it's definitely gory, but it's just that shock factor of like, oh, and it just like, it pulls you right in. It's just like, and it's just this hyper focus on what's happening. And for the start of it, it lingers you for a bit. It like holds you on the edge right there, because you don't actually know for a few seconds what is actually happening. What have I just witnessed? And then it clicks and a light bulb goes off, and you're like, holy shit. And then you see, so essentially it starts off with a ballroom. They're on a cruise ship, the Ghost Ship, and everybody's dancing. There's this captain, he's dancing with this beautiful little girl, and he's helping her out. And there's a wire that is above, on the sterns of the ship, and it snaps, and the wire is like hanging over the whole dance room, and everybody's like dancing, having a good time. Beautiful ball gowns, gorgeous, beautiful atmosphere, gorgeous visual, and everybody's dancing. The wire snaps, and as you can imagine, it just goes. And if you've seen Final Destination 2, you know what I'm talking about. But this was the OG. For me, this is the OG. And the wire just goes, and then you just see the end of the wire like shaking with like, blood dripping off of it. And then it cuts back to the little girl dancing with the captain of the ship. He's like in all white too. And like, he's just got this like look on his face. And you just see her face. And it's played by, what's her name? Is it Emily Brown? I'm probably getting it wrong. I apologize. I'll put her name here. But she also was in The Uninvited. That was really good. But this is probably the first horror I think she might have starred in, and I saw her in. I think she was also in Sucker Punch, Snyder. But yeah, so you see her looking up, and she's just like, you see the slow trauma build on her face until she lets out this massive scream. And she does that when you start to see the body start to drop, and body parts, everything just starts to shift, and you see like torsos shifting from, it's so good. It's so graphically awesome. And the amount of effort to like the set, like I can just imagine the set design of like the space that was occupied, and then all these like dead bodies that had to be positioned the right way, and to just execute that scene, I think was amazing. Like it was really like a brilliant scene. So I'm sorry I'm talking a lot about each scene, but like I talk a lot about stuff. But yeah, that was my number 2. So the Ghost Ship wire intro scene. Definitely check that out. 3 on my list. And that is from a very disturbing, one of the grossest, most torture porn, if not the most well-known torture porn franchise, and the original film that started it all, Hostel. I think some people would talk about Saw being the original torture porn, but I'm going to go with Hostel. Hostel was so much fucking worse. It was so much way worse. And I honestly think a better movie just because it was written better. But yeah, so the scene in Hostel 2. Now, Hostel 2 stars Lauren German, BG Phillips, and Heather Matarazzo. So there is a scene where it's kind of got like the Elizabeth Bathory of your murderers, basically. Now, if you've never seen a Hostel film, basically Hostel is essentially a bunch of rich people that purchase, like they kidnap and literally purchase tourists that visit other countries, and then torture, kill them. They take out their most deepest, darkest, twisted, sinister, disgusting, insidious fantasies, and basically you buy someone to kill them however you want. Just go for it. You want to chop somebody's head off, you can do that in Hostel. So that's the premise of the film. It's very disturbing. If you haven't seen it, it's quite a watch. It's out there. But it was a really cool film, the first one. So this is number 2, and in number 2 it's got 3 women. In the first one you've got 3 men, so this one's got 3 women. And there is a death scene. Like I said, it's an Elizabeth Bathory Blood Countess, Bloody Mary type. You've got suspense in there, and you've just got such a disturbing scene presenting itself to you. And essentially what happens is Heather Matarazzo's character is kidnapped. She's hung upside down naked in this creepy candlelit gross dungeon cellar thing. It literally looks like Elizabeth Bathory. They did a good job with the set creation. It really looks like just disturbing, like a modernized version. If Elizabeth Bathory still existed, it's like a modernized version of that. She gets into the bath and she has this scythe, this massive like Grim Reaper situation going. And I just remember the lighting, like the flickering of the lighting and the candlelight, sort of like the way they lit her body and the way they showed like her body sweating, because it was like this compacted, heated room. And then obviously you can imagine being so traumatized and so terrified that your body would start to break out into sweat. And I just remember that like lighting on her body and showing the top where her feet had been tied up, and you just see her feet in this like position like this, and they're just like, her feet are just shaking, and she's making this like, really props to Heather Matarazzo, because she's making this like whimpering noise. It's like there's a lot of films I've noticed where actresses take it to the next level. Like the recent one that I really like is really cool is oh gosh, what's her name? Samara Weaving in Ready or Not. She has like a goat scream. It reminds me of a goat. She screams, and it's like this visceral, guttural sound that she makes. And Heather Matarazzo in this film, Throwback, the way she gets killed, the noises, she doesn't scream, she doesn't like do that sort of thing, where, a lot of female characters in horror films, when they're about to get killed, and they know they're going to get killed, they just scream really loud and high pitched. This isn't what they do. So props to like Eli Roth and his direction and everything, because I think, Heather Matarazzo basically makes this like whimpering, terrified, shaking noise, and it's so disturbing to watch. It's actually, it was really hard for me to watch it the first time that I saw it. And it's a very disturbing death scene, so that is why it is number 3 on my list. Okay, coming in at number 4 on my list is another Lauren German throwback. So Lauren German was in, like I said, she was in Hostel 2, and before Hostel 2, she was actually in the Texas Chainsaw remake, which I adore. I love the Texas Chainsaw remake. It's one of my top 5 horror films of all time. Jessica Biel was amazing. That film, I don't care what anybody says, I think that film is better than the original. It's the best Texas Chainsaw film. Fight me, I don't care. So in that film, there was a kill that I wanted to add to this list, but it's not necessarily the kill, it's more the disturbing thing of what happens after the kill. But that movie was just so terrifying to me when I first saw it. And again, it was made in 2003, and in this movie, if you've seen the original Texas Chainsaw, in this film, there's a bunch of, teenagers, a group of teenagers, they're in a van, they're road tripping through Texas, and they pick up this woman who's hitchhiking. Now, she's like, obviously like really like distraught, and go up off the side of the road, obviously trying to help. And that's played by Lauren German. She plays this character, and out and ask what happened to her, and is she okay, and figure out how to help her. And it is the most, like, it's one of the just the coolest, the creative decision to the choice that was made here. And again, she's like wearing just a dress, right? And she's sitting on this chair, and all of a sudden, she like slowly pulls out from her lower area, she pulls out a gun, like this covered in blood. It's just disturbing, right? She pulls out a gun from underneath her dress. As you can imagine, there really isn't anywhere to put a gun, hide a gun. So she pulls out the gun, and then she proceeds to put it in her mouth and pull the trigger. And the shot, like from that, pulling out the gun, you're shocked. You're like in shock, and you're like, what the fuck? And then before you know it, she's got it in her mouth, and then everyone's like, no, no, no. And then she pulls the trigger, and you just see such a sick shot where they do it. They basically show, and it's been done in film since, but this again, and essentially they just show the hole in her head through the back rear window, and then it pans back to the cabin and the reaction of everybody as it happens. And it was just such a cool scene, And again, I was shooketh. I was shocked when I first watched this scene. That's another scene that has stayed with me, so that's why it's on my list. Okay, coming in at number 5 on my list is I Spit on Your Grave. This is a very well-known, I think, film. It's an indie film. It's not a big blockbuster film, and I think there's definitely been more. I know there's I Spit on Your Grave 2 and I think 3. I don't know if I've seen the third one, but in the first one, basically the concept of this film is there's a woman, I think she's a writer, she's trying to go to like a house, a cabin, and she stops by the gas station. There's all these creepy local guys and whatever, and essentially they track her down to this cabin. She's all alone, and they track her down and they torture her. They beat her. They all rape her, and it's just really, it's very hard to watch. I struggle very much, obviously, as a woman. I think anybody would, to be fair, but obviously as a female, my whole thing, I can't watch animals being hurt in movies or dying for that matter. Like, even if it's not a horror, I can't watch a movie. Like, I can't watch Lassie. I love Lassie, but I can't watch like it. So I struggle really a lot with animals dying, even if they're bad. Like when they killed Godzilla, I was so upset. Why? I was so happy that the egg survived, the one with Matthew Broderick. Anyway, so I can't watch animals dying, and I can't watch women being abused, women being hurt in that way, and I can't do rape scenes or sexual abuse, sexual violence towards women. I physically feel ill when I watch it, and I don't get ill when I watch horror movies. Now I kind of do because I'm getting old and apparently I have a weak stomach, but I used to have an ironclad stomach, and I used to be able to watch the most gruesome, gory stuff, and I loved it. Like, again, Texas Chainsaw is one of my top 5 films. Love all those films. But so yeah, this though, it's disturbing on that emotional level, and it was very hard to watch. And she doesn't get raped by one guy, one of these people, offenders. She gets raped, I think, by like 6 men. It goes on, and it's just so disturbing. But essentially, moving past that very quickly, let's move past that. So she gets assaulted, and she comes back for her revenge. They basically think that they've killed her and she's done, and she's not. And she comes back and she gets revenge on every single one of these. Beep. And yeah, it's very disturbing. All the kills, to be fair, are creatively disgusting. But they're kind of what you want to watch. It's definitely a revenge fantasy film. So if you're into that, then that's this film. But it is very, very disturbing, and it's very gruesome, I would say. So creative kills, but yeah, just really disturbing. Just prepare yourself. But there's one kill in particular, and that is for a character named Johnny. And Johnny is a dick. He's an asshole, and he deserved what he got, to be fair. They all did. I mean, you watch this movie and you're very conflicted because it's like such a level of torture from one human to another, but then you obviously know why she's doing what she's doing. So, you know, when I first watched this film, I was like, yeah. And then when I had to rewatch this scene to make this video, I was like, oh. So yeah, he's an asshole. So part of you is like, don't do it. But then part of you is like, yeah, do it. And essentially she tortures him. She pulls his teeth out one by one. She has him tied up with his arms up and his legs spread. And then she gets some shears. And well, you can guess what happens after that. We have House of Wax, the remake. House of Wax is a pretty cool film. I really enjoy it. I've seen a few people react to it. Like I said, I was watching that, so that's why this made my list. And this comes in, like I said, at number 6 with Jared Padalecki's character. And essentially, he plays a guy named Wade, and he is in this House of Wax area, and he basically gets murdered. He gets his ankle slit, like in Hostel, and then proceeds to I think he gets stabbed a few times, and then he's still alive, and then he gets put into this like chamber of torture, essentially, and he is basically made into a wax version of himself, like a wax figure, while he's still alive. So you see him get like, they just like rip all his facial hair off at once, and it's just such a like cool design that they did with it. And then they put him in this contraption. It looks very Saw-like, and then it just starts spraying like hot candle wax. If you can imagine being alive and having this hot candle wax, like, oh. It's number 6 because it's not up there in terms of memorable compared to the other scenes I've put in there. But I think of all of them, this is probably one of the most, it's probably I think the second most torturous scene I've ever seen a character go through. So I really feel bad for his character, and that's why it's on my list. Coming in at number 7 is, again, Hostel 2. Now, at the end of Hostel 2, Lauren German's character, she plays Beth. She actually deals with one of the guys who essentially bought her, and then he kind of changes his mind, but he's an abusive asshole. He had a fantasy of killing his wife, and so he picked Beth, he bought her to kill her and live out his fantasy for his actual wife that he was supposed to go back to. So he just wanted to like kill somebody else. So that's pretty twisted, right? So don't feel sorry for this guy as I continue to tell you what happens to him. Essentially, the movie's finishing with Beth, and she escapes this guy. He has a weak moment, and she sort of she puts him in a compromising position, and essentially deals with the main dude that runs the hostel branch, right? And she basically negotiates to buy out the contract of her life. And in this scene, she is, and it's another penis scene, just another, So she's holding his, hostage, his member, and again, he's a prick right up until the end. And so she snip, and yeah, it is a really disturbing scene. The worst part about it wasn't that she did it, it was that once she did it, she rips his junk off, and you see it, by the way, you see everything. She rips it off and she feeds it to the dogs, and it's just so disturbing. I nearly threw up like watching it. I'm gonna need some coconut water for this one, you guys. I mean, it's good, but like, you guys. Coming in at number 8 on my list is Jason X. No, don't say it. Listen, before you start going at me in the comments, I'm not saying Jason X is a great movie, but I'm not going to say it's a bad movie. I'm not. I like Jason X. Like, it's so bad that it's good. It's like a guilty pleasure. And I don't have many of those. Most of the films, I'm like unabashedly, unapologetically, I like them. I won't sit there and pretend that I don't like it because the mass public doesn't think it's a good film. I don't care what people think. Like, I tend to be a black sheep with my choices as well. And like, I actually liked Jason X. I grew up on those like films, especially the Jason and Freddy and Michael slashers and stuff like that. Not the later ones, like the Freddy versus Jason types. So anyway, speaking of, that's coming up. But yeah, so in Jason X, they are in space, and there's a scene with Jason, and essentially it's the liquid nitrogen scene. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty iconic and classic. There's a Michael Myers version of this with a hot tub, but essentially in this scene, there's obviously liquid nitrogen tank, and you see this woman, and Jason comes up, and he basically like grabs her, and he shoves her head into this liquid nitrogen pool, and it's such a cool visual, and you see her screaming, and you see her scream just turn into like stone almost from the nitrogen. And it's just such a cool scene. And then he proceeds to grab her head and just smash it, and you see like all the pieces fall apart like a puzzle. It's very cool, and yeah, I really enjoy it, so it's in my top 10. Okay, as I said, speaking of Freddy vs. Jason, it's coming in at number 9 and look, there are so many iconic kills in Freddy vs. Jason. I love Freddy vs. Jason. It's actually probably my favorite. Nay, it is my favorite. It is my favorite Jason film, and I can't say it's my favorite Freddy film, but it is my favorite Jason film. That was a tongue twister. In this film, there is a kill where Jason walks in and he grabs an entire bed with this gross dude lying on it, and he literally just like flips it. He like panini presses this guy, and you see his body, and you see him like contort where his spine is so bent and broken. And it's just the way that they position the arms and like the way that his head was facing, and it's just, yeah, and then the bed stays like that. It doesn't like unfold. Like, a lot of Jason's deaths, they're very quick, machete through the, but I really liked it, so it's in my top 10. Last but not least, and the final one, number 10, I had to put this in, and again, there are so many kills, you guys, from so many iconic movies. Don't worry, they all went through my head, but I had to write it as I felt it. And so this is a recent film, actually. Most of these are pretty old because, again, they just stayed with me. But this one is recent, and that is Fear Street, 1994, the first one, the best one in my opinion. I know a lot of people think 78 is better, but for me it was 94 because I'm a 90s. I'm into the 90s. I love the 90s. Like, please take me back. But in the scene, there is a character named Kate, and she gets stabbed, and then she gets grabbed by the hair, and she gets pushed onto this table, and there is a bread slicer, and yes, you can guess what happens next. And it's not that I haven't seen gruesome kills like this before, but it was just done so well visually. It was so graphic, and I really appreciated that especially from a Netflix film. Like, it was just really well done. And you proceed to see her go through the bread slicer, and it's really, really visually disturbing, upsetting, but also satisfying, because you really see like the layers of her face intact but not. So if you can imagine it, and if you don't want to imagine it, just watch the scene. It's very cool. In fact, watch the whole trilogy of films. They're very, very good. But yeah, that is my top 10 list of horror, gruesome, awesome, disturbing, torture, porn kills. Let me know what your like most disturbing kills, or like just the best kills, like things. It could be supernatural horror, it could be anything. Could be like, you know, doesn't even have to be horror, just like thrillers, stuff like that. Like, what are your favorite kills? You can drop yours down below. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and yeah, let me know what you guys think of my list, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.